Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we have a look at the 1982 film Friday the 13th, Part 3. And as we watched it, Part 3 in 3D, this is episode 392 of the Castle of Horror podcast, if you can believe that. Not counting the interviews, not counting episodes we've forgotten. This is episode 392. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to talk about it from the perspective of horror movies who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can find at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Cue funky disco Friday the 13th music. It is good to be back, baby.
Man, I'm with you. I love this theme. I really do. Unironically love it. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary. At this point I have no idea what that means. We're on episode 392. Color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello, everybody, and happy 2023 because this is our first episode of the year.
Yeah, and I'm super stoked to have this as. I mean, it's a good one to kick off the year with. I was honestly shocked that we had not done this one before. So, all right, Friday the 13th Part 3. It's a 1982 slasher film directed by Steve Miner, produced by Frank Mancuso Jr. It stars Dana Kimmel, Paul Kratka, and Richard Brooker. It's the third Friday the 13th movie. There are two, count them, two novelizations of this, which I have no idea why that would be the case, but that's just really wild to me. They did one in 1982 and then another one in 1988, and I have not read them yet to see what the differences are. It picks up right after Friday the 13th Part 2. It follows a teenage girl who has weird flashbacks of having been attacked by Jason in the past, which starts to mess with the continuity of Friday the 13th Part 3. And I'm going to turn to Drew as we go through this because he's our resident Jason expert. And it is the first appearance of
As
a
opposed
signature.
to our resident expert, Jason.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. There's a signature item of Jason's that appears in this movie for the first time. That is one of the best trivia questions in the world. There was a trivia question about Friday the 13th in Scream that was positively lame compared with what it could have been about this item that appears for the first time in the third movie. And let's see. It was followed by Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which sadly brought the series to an end in 1984. No,
And
that-
that's
sure
the way it
did.
is. Period.
No more.
that is not remotely the
Earth
case.
2.0, whatever this is.
No, so that's Friday 13th Part 3 in 3D, and I'm super stoked to talk about it. By the way, and we'll do it in this order. We'll go Drew, Julia, Tony, and I'll go. And while I'm waiting, I'm gonna figure out if this came out before or after Amityville. So
It's before because it's the first thing to come out in 3D in the theaters, really, aside from like very unimportant things since like 1957, I think it was.
really,
So yes.
Yeah, with the new camera, like, because I listened to it with the commentary and I had forgotten. They reiterated it, like what a tough shoot it was because it was a new camera where you could shoot. You didn't have to have two cameras at once. Probably could go into all of that, but they said you had to really hit your marks and you had to really pay attention. You had to really do things a certain way. Was something they mentioned.
And then they
throughout
ended
the-
up paying like a ton of money to outfit all the theaters so they could actually show it.
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
wow, that is real. Okay, more on that later. And yeah, I see you here. Amityville 3D was in 1983, so this is a year before that. Okay, let's get our opening thoughts. Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go, and then we'll go into just various topics about Friday the 13th Part 3. So, Drew, what are your opening thoughts?
In a move that will surprise no one, I absolutely fucking love this movie. Friday the 13th, as I've said many times before, is on my personal Mount Rushmore of pop culture. It's was my Star Wars in a lot of ways, and this movie in particular, I think, is one of the more important entries because we get our visual what the icon of Jason.
You can say it, because coming from you, I
we
think
get
it's
the
better
we
than
get the
me saying
hockey
it.
mask, man. Like
Yes.
like prior to this, Jason was sort of amorphous. In the first movie, he's this deformed little boy. In the second movie, they just ripped off the town that dreaded sundown. Here, Jason becomes this pop culture icon, and such a fun movie. Great kills in it, good 3D effects, really fun score that I already alluded to. I love Friday the 13th. I love that we're kicking off 2022 or 2023. Geez, that talking about this. I also know that this is a personal favorite of Tony's, and in fact, I watched this in 3D over at Tony's house last year, I believe. So
Yeah,
that
was fun.
we did a double feature of House of Wax, so that was a lot of fun. I fucking love this movie. And the thing is about Friday the 13th movies is, now that I've watched one, I think I'm just gonna go back and watch all of them, because there's never not an excuse to marathon Friday the 13th movies in this guy's house.
Awesome.
Well, that new box set too is really pretty fantastic. I don't know if you got that one, but
oh yeah,
that thing is pretty darn good, which is how I got this series, and so I need to go back and probably watch them all with commentary, because I don't think I've done that, so that would be really cool.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Drew. All right, Julia. So you seem to have a good time when we were watching this movie.
Well, yeah, I didn't remember, and I feel stupid about this, that the mask didn't appear before now. And so I was like, wait a minute, what? Like, really? Friday the 13th is like, that's just synonymous with the hockey mask, and it doesn't show up till the third movie. I love the story of how it comes to be, in that they were trying to figure out, okay, well, what should we do with them? And the 3D effects supervisor, Martin J. Sadoff, just had hockey stuff with him. So he just, as they were going through different things, he pulled out the hockey mask out of his bag, and they were like, "Yeah, this is cool. Let's go with this," which I think is just fantastic.
well,
Yeah, 'cause
there's
when we
Anyway.
get to that part, it doesn't make a lot of sense as far as why it's there, but it's still great.
Yeah,
there's actually a lot of different stories about the hockey mask. Like
Mm.
the one you just said is usually the most commonly agreed on one, which we can talk more about the hockey mask when we get into it. But
Right.
That can even be our first topic once we all do our opening thoughts, because
sure.
talking about Jason and first starting with his mask. But yeah, go ahead.
well, Drew should finish your sentence. His sentence.
Oh, that's all I was gonna say. Is
Okay.
it's like I'll save it for the rest of
You'll say
I'll
the
save
other
it
stories
for
later.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Yes, but no, I think it's a lot of fun. I think some of the effects are obviously super corny, and it's obvious that they are concentrating so much on doing the 3D effects that they're like, the acting is definitely, way down the list of things that are priorities. But man, some of the effects are great. And we were watching it with the cheesy 3D glasses that come with the Blu-ray or the DVD, whatever we're watching
It's a
it on.
DVD.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I kind of wish that we had some better ones, because those are just like not fun to wear. But still, it still works, and I still like screamed when the harpoon comes at you. I'm just like, oh my god!
That's
So
awesome.
I mean, that was just, all of that was awesome. So it was very. I thought it was very fun. I enjoyed it a lot. There's obviously some things that don't particularly work great, but it's a fun movie.
Awesome. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, this is my favorite Friday the 13th movie, hands down. That doesn't mean this isn't like, social media. We're like, well, why do you hate 4? Right? It's like, no,
Right.
this is the one I prefer. I think it has everything that a Friday the 13th slasher. I mean, it's the prototype for where we go with this. And I think in a pop culture sense, this is where everything really gels. This is where people this is what they think of Friday the 13th, and it carries that, it like starts this through line past this, in my opinion. The way that everybody comes to the lake, and there's all these iconic moments that really fit the teens go into the woods, young adults go into the camp and get slaughtered, and there's stuff around it. Like, I think this really gels it all together. I have been lucky that I have a way to play it in like true 3D, and since the Blu-ray looks great, Anaglyph is cool, but having it in like true 3D, I mean, I've seen it a couple times, I think, at the Draft House in 3D.
I don't know what that means. What are the
Anaglyph is the red blue or red
I see.
green. But I have an active glasses set up, so
Mhm.
and because of like watching Creature from the Black Lagoon in 3D, Rain, we actually bought things like we had like Kiss Me Kate was done in 3D.
Oh yeah.
Like I didn't even know, I didn't think about it, and then when you watch, you're like, oh, well, that scene, I get it why that was. So I've been lucky. I've watched it a couple times in 3D already. One again, like I said, with Drew and Jamie, and House of Wax looks great as well when we did that.
Sadie
But
Thompson was
it's a
also
nice
done in
new.
3D, which would be so
Which one?
awesome to see at the Miss Sadie Thompson, which we saw at the Button-Amathon one
Oh,
year. But it's
oh yeah.
just a really great movie with Rita
I'll have to
Hayworth.
see if that's in. I mean, I'll get a lot of things in 3D. So they're available. So some are better than others.
hmm
There's still a couple of 80s ones that are not, the 3D didn't get transferred well, and the movies are not good enough. But I think this one holds up, whether you watch it in 3D or not. It's not just the gags. Like I said, it sets us up for what I think Jason becomes as a pop culture icon.
hmm
And it's got lots of cool 80s stuff, 80s bikers, the kind of meta thing of Shelley being an effects horror
Yeah,
kid is
yeah.
actually pretty good, although you still, like, we can get into it, but a lot of times you just want to go, like, me being an awkward, like, not having game kind of guy and a geek. I'm like, Shelley, dude, you stop it, man. Just you
I
gotta
know.
you gotta lay off. But this time I actually watched it with the commentary, and so it's like the actors, and I liked it again, like watching it this time like that, because the commentary track is very conversational, so it actually kind of felt like us doing this,
hmm
which was great. So I really
That
enjoyed
sounds really
kind of
cool.
visiting that, because like I said, I had seen this movie lately in 3D, because I wanted to show. I'm like, you have to see this. This looks beautiful in 3D. Uh, yeah, I just, it's the one for me. I know that varies per person, but this also, I think it was the first one I saw as well, so that kind of shapes it. But I think overall, as I've revisited it, it just works in a way that, and it becomes like I said, the prototype for a lot of other slasher movies.
I agree. Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. I agree with you. I really like. I mean, I love Friday the 13th Part One a lot because it's such a great, like, I don't know, it's such a great, really bloody Agatha Christie movie. But this,
Right.
to me, that, with all these 80s cats out in the woods, and as you said, an 80s biker gang, and certain tropes that we're going to get into about slasher movies that I want to, like, nail down, and not the one that, people always imagine that there's this thing you know just easy stuff like kids have sex and then they get killed. That's not it. There are tropes that I notice over and over again, and I'm sure you do too, in slasher films, that sort of amaze me that they became part of it. One of them is just that, why do we it's interesting that we spend so much time setting up all these characters just to kill them, not to resolve any of their storylines, which is, I guess, just the way it is. It's so interesting because it means that you don't have to resolve any of the conflict that you set up, because all of it gets superseded by this water mutant who is out to kill people. And so, anyway, whatever the hell he is, and let's start with that. Let's start with Jason Voorhees, that delightful Scandinavian American. What the hell is the deal? So,
Because he
as
seems to
we
not just be immortal, but also to be kind of, like Jason said, he kind of has Wolverine healing powers, because when his arm is almost cut off,
right,
it's immediately heals and he's able to use it with no problem. So it's not like, it's not that
yeah,
he's just surviving. He's also not being affected by
So,
things
so
for
let's
very
talk
long.
about some before we explain why any of this is. Let's talk about what Jason's powers appear to be. So he doesn't talk, but he's very fast. He's pretty agile.
Very strong.
He has good
He's
aim.
strong enough to crush someone's skull so hard enough that their eye literally pops
Yeah.
out.
Yes,
Well, and he can like
Um,
lift
yeah,
people
that's
up with a blade, you know. Like I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like just in
yeah.
yeah.
But I agree that crushing the skull, like that's a big deal. That's really strong.
It usually takes a vice or something, right? Like, I mean, that's
Yeah.
That's what gangster movies have told me that they can
that's true.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's interesting about Jason here versus part 2, which we should get around to doing one day,
Yeah.
is that I feel like more so than in 2, like they really leaned into more of the monstrousness of Jason. Like in part 2 he's it's like they're still almost trying to like, well, this is a deformed individual, but
And he's just
it's
out there somewhere, right?
yeah, like here they're like, nah, like it's not as crazy as it gets like after that. Like I think from final chapter on, it got to the point where like they were just like, well, Jason doesn't experience pain the way he do, because like in this there's a couple times where he actually like howls in pain when he gets like stabbed and everything. So
Yeah.
like there's still a little bit of that like kind of call
But that's what
back
I'm
to
saying
part
is he
2.
seems to feel the pain and then heal right away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's fine. Like a scene later, and like he literally survives getting hung, and he just pulls himself off, and
Yeah.
he's good to go. So by now they do basically just say, well, Jason regenerates, but
Yes.
back here, I don't think that I've said this on some of the other times we've done Fridays. Like I don't think the filmmakers were concerned about thinking it out. Like
Right.
this wasn't like Freddy Krueger. Like like when they wrote the first Nightmare on Elm Street, like there was somebody, Wes Craven and whatever, like they sat down and they were like, these are going to be the rules that Freddy Krueger operates on.
Right.
Nobody, I think, ever did that with Jason. I think that they were just sort of making it up as it goes along. And, as I've said every time we've done one of these, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Because he's a campfire story.
Right. Oh, well
and
said. Well said. Yes.
a campfire story changes a little bit every time you tell it. So
Mhm.
What I find?
think
Go ahead. I'm sorry, please.
No, you first.
I am fascinated by the fact that Jason, there are certain things that it's all rule of cool, but in a much more innocent way. Like rule of cool being the thing where you go ahead and do it if it looks awesome, even if it doesn't make any sense. And there's a similar thing here where I get the impression that they choose what Jason will do or implement based on will it be scary or creepy. And so squishing somebody's head, yes. Jason would never pick up a shotgun. Jason would never pick up somebody's pistol. Like he doesn't use complicated machinery.
Well, and interestingly, they changed the story so that he didn't end up raping. They don't say that he raped Debbie because Jason doesn't rape people. So which I thought was
So that's interesting that they're
So that whole scene
go ahead and explain it to us for the listeners.
is a holdover from the original plan for Friday the 13th Part 3D was that they were going to bring back the Ginny character from Part 2,
right.
and they were going to jump ahead a few years, and
they were going to do a mental hospital,
which is funny because that's what they ultimately sort of went with A New Beginning. But they were going to have Ginny having flashbacks to being attacked by Jason. When they start and they started sculpting what we ended up with, which they thought, well, maybe people won't like it if we don't do it in the woods, because that's what we the brand is. But they still wanted this character to have
a
this
past with Jason.
a past
right?
with Jason, but it makes for this really awkward scene because
Mhm.
like he grabs her by the hair and then she says, "Well, then I blacked out and I woke up in my own bed."
Yeah, and
So
why? How did that happen? Yeah, totally.
yeah, because like Jason, especially from this movie on, if he comes across you, he's going to kill you. Like,
Right.
you know, it's not. He's a Terminator. Like, so like, why did she end up back in her own bed? Did her parents somehow rescue her? You know, you know,
Yeah,
it's
that
a
was annoying.
And it never pays off. That's the
Oh,
crazy thing is
that's one of the
normally
things I didn't like about the movie was I was like, what? But what happened?
The other thing that's really weird about that scene, and again, I think this just goes to show you again that they were, you know, gonna, you know, just making things up as they went along, is when you see Jason in the flashback, he's not wearing his like coverall hillbilly look from Friday the 13th Part 2. He's dressed in the clothes from this movie. So like they you know, they weren't that worried about continuity, you know.
Right.
And again, this was the 80s, you know. It you know, people weren't able to just go back and rewatch. It's this whole reason why we have like a, you know, a few minutes of Friday the 13th Part 2 before this movie even starts. But it does make it kind of weird that when you revisit this Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4, which are all supposed to take place right back to each other, like the continuity doesn't quite work. But again, I fall back on the campfire thing. That
Yeah.
being said, it's important to remember that Jason Voorhees wasn't Jason Voorhees pop culture icon yet. And in fact, on the set, they mostly, like behind the scenes, they mostly just called him the monster. They didn't actually call him Jason that much.
Well, and in this
And
movie, he never gets called Jason.
they never call him Jason
Is
at
that
all.
so? Is that the
Yeah,
case?
only that 6 minutes from the previous movie, but not in this movie. He's not
Well,
called. Jason.
why would any of those characters know who the heck he
Wow, that
was?
is
Well, again,
really
campfire
interesting.
story.
Yeah.
That is that I had not even noticed that at all, and that is super interesting. Yeah.
By the way, we
But-
watched this. We were prompted to watch this movie because last Friday was Friday the 13th, and Jason and I actually watched it on Friday the 13th. So that was fun.
Yes. Yeah. Which
I did as well, but then I rewatched it again today. So not that I need much of an excuse.
It's, you know, so Jason, thank you. I wanted to sort of go over his powers. So I think it's almost not even worth trying to. Basically, in other words, what you're saying is we just have a basic concept of what Jason is. We know that he was loyal to his mom. We know that it is not relevant, by the way, in this movie that his mom was the killer in the first movie. It's just literally not relevant. You know, we know that he was loyal to his
Except that
mom.
she shows up in the nightmare sequence at the end.
Yes,
As the
which
Lady
I
Lily.
love that thing. That is so awesome. But yeah, what we like, we know his background is he was a kid who drowned while counselors were having sex. That doesn't really come into this film at all. He's just this superpowered semi supernatural being. I think the fact that, like I mentioned, he wouldn't pick up a handgun. He will pick up a this harpoon gun, and you know, but that's pretty easy to use. It doesn't, you know, so I like all of that. I like that there's kind of there's not a logic to it, but you know what would work with him and what wouldn't. Having him wield a shotgun would be cheating.
I think the thing is about guns and the terms of the type of movie this is that a gun feels terribly impersonal in the way a stabbing implement does not.
Right.
And you know, I think there's just something visceral and scary about the idea of being hacked to pieces with an axe or a machete, or
I agree.
you know.
Yeah.
And you know, that being said, when he does pick up the harpoon gun, he is an excellent shot, as Julia pointed out.
Yes. No, he has good aim. I mean, so was it Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers who actually uses a shotgun as basically a battering ram in one of these movies. I remember some movie where
That's
somebody.
Michael Myers. That's one of the Halloweens.
Okay, yeah. So I think Jason probably would also, if he picked up a shotgun, would be more likely to just bludgeon you with it. But what's interesting about this film? Somebody pointed out the film is broken up really into well, like most things, it's a first and a second and third act. We open up with something I really love. I kind of liked getting to know these young people that are gathering together in a van to go into the woods, and they're going on a break together. We meet them. The most memorable is Shelley, who is this slightly overweight movie enthusiast. And the funny thing about Shelley, like Tony, you were talking about this.
He's a guy, just for the people who haven't
He's
watched
a
the movie.
guy named Shelley. He's an expert at makeup effects, very much like the doofuses in Summer School from
Mhm.
1987.
That's what I thought of too.
Yeah, but which is, by the way, if you haven't seen Summer School, it is one for the ages. I mean, it is just such a wonderful. It is like one of my all-time favorite 80s films. But I was watching Shelley and I was like, man, Shelley would probably have some luck with like this Vera girl that he's hanging out with if he would just cool his jets.
I'm
Just a
gonna
little
go
bit.
with I'm gonna go with no on that because she's way out of his league. But he could find somebody.
Well,
He is out of his
she
league.
does start to warm up to him before bad
Well,
things
yeah, but she's not
happen. But
interested in him.
no, of course, but he's his own worst enemy. And
Yes.
when I look back at like I definitely I don't think I pulled anything like Shelley because he's stupid enough to think it's funny to do makeup effects and wear a mask and like all this stuff. But like, I had things like my stepbrother telling me, like, look, man, girls don't go for a calculator watch even if it has a video game on it. But like watching Shelley was just now nowadays you might get geek points for it, but back in the
Well,
day where I
Apple
lived, that
Watch
was not.
anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but that was not. But it had a video game on it. It had a space
And you can
experience.
write boobs.
I wasn't even. I liked the it was it. Oh, it
That's
played all
so
these
funny.
different tunes. But anyway, but Shelley just constantly, just when somebody's like, well, at least he's kind of fun to hang out with. He's kind of funny, right? Because
Yeah.
you can win people
Yeah.
over like with humor. He pulls things where you're just like, dude,
Shelley
you're all
needs to
there,
understand.
man. And he's his own worst enemy. But he's,
Right.
the whole deal is, though, we do feel like he's overcompensating, right? He's got, he's kind of the frizzy hair, slightly overweight. Like, oh, nobody's going to
He's
like a
got some
guy
low
like me.
self-esteem.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I get it. Like,
It's so interesting to watch him though, because people like this and you go, yeah, he because I've known plenty of overweight guys with bad complexions who nevertheless have plenty of luck because they are funny and they know what their strengths are, and
Yeah, they have
and
self-confidence.
it's likable
But
people,
that is-
right?
and if Shelley hadn't got his throat slashed by Jason, maybe when he, maybe 5 years from now, he would have been that guy. Which leads me also to ask, how old are these people? Because I guess they seem to be, outside of the two hippies they're hanging out with, these guys.
That's what I was gonna say.
We'll
Like,
get to that.
everybody's kind of like, late high school, early college, except for these two like stoners.
Yeah,
Why
they're
are they
hanging out with
there?
this-
That was
It's
just so
so
weird.
weird.
Those guys.
Those guys
Yeah.
are in their 30s.
Because they brought the drugs.
Well,
But
there you
these
go.
guys didn't really seem to be that into the drugs. Like, I almost seemed like there was just like that they were kind of forcing it on them.
It's very
Here,
weird.
take
Yeah, the
some.
two stoners are, they're a fun couple and they get along great. I admire their relationship. They seem to know what they like. But all of they're like 10 years older than all the other gang.
Yeah.
No,
And-
at
I
least.
will say this about this group of young people versus a lot of these, not just Fridays but other horror movies from this time period, is none of them are overt assholes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the worst people in this movie is the biker gang, and they're still kind of entertaining as a unit. Like
Yes.
you look at a lot of these other movies from this time period, and you have characters that are just made as horrible as possible, so you can't wait for Jason to lop their their head off with a
Right.
machete. And that's fine, but too. But I do think that these kids are perhaps they're not like, they don't have the most dimension to them, but they're a fairly likable bunch.
Yeah, I would say two things. Number one, I thought that the fact that the bikers were the only people of color was super racist. And number two, that Rick is just really creepy with his whole like, oh, you got here, let's have sex. What? You're not gonna have sex with me?
Oh
Why
yeah,
aren't you? What?
it's
I'm really
yeah.
getting really bummed out that you've put this wall between us. It's like it's been a freaking day and you haven't seen each other in years. Jesus, like that. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was really annoying me. So that guy, I was happy to have him,
That's true.
have
Well,
his eyeballs squished out.
I'm trying to understand if I'm watching this in the theater in 1982, am I expected with him to just shake my head and go, "Yep, that's what dudes are
Boys will be
like."
boys. Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Admittedly, he doesn't sexually assault her. He's
that we
just
know of.
he's just like, I don't understand why you're not having sex with me already. And by the way, I had an opportunity to have sex with a totally different girl. I passed it up for you, baby doll.
Yeah,
So
he's definitely got a guy has
Just
needs. I think you
gross.
can
He's so
understand kind
gross.
of thing. You're like, come
Yeah,
on, man,
that
come
is
it's like
on.
really
give it a day or whatever. I mean, Jesus. Anyway, so that guy, I was ready to. I mean, he didn't necessarily need to die as horribly as he did, but I wasn't
It's
sad to
it's
see
it's
him
a
go.
it's a bit disproportionate if
Yeah,
as far as
it's true.
retributions go, but that's the universe
Yeah.
of these movies, is that you behave in a certain way, you're probably going to get
Well,
the
they're all gonna get
worst
killed except
death.
So
for
do you think that
maybe one
Dana
person.
survives because she is
Debbie.
the night it's actually Chris. I'm sorry, it's Dana
Oh,
Kimmel
Chris.
played by as Chris Higgins. Do you think Chris survives? Well, I mean, she's our final girl, but she's the one who is the most sort of kind and sweet, I suppose. Although
I always here's the thing. I always kind of wrinkle my nose at the idea that there is some sort of ultimate moral implication here, because
Mhm.
I think a lot of the times these movies, they were just trying to make a scary
Mhm.
movie. And like, because in particular is this one, like Rick, yeah, he gets killed, and he was kind of the douchiest out of the lot, but everybody gets killed,
Yeah.
Right.
except for Chris. And yeah, she survives. She's not portrayed as, yes, she's fairly nice, but she's not portrayed as like virginal or anything. Like,
Yeah.
No,
like
I
in
think
fa-
it's just that she has that history where he already attacked her once before. I mean,
Yeah, I
almost
agree.
if it was a more a deeper movie, they almost could have made it like a Phantom of the Opera thing where he has a thing for her and
yeah.
decides he's going to spare her, and that's why he didn't kill her the first time. But they didn't actually
Yeah,
give us
she's
any
just
reason
kind of the
why he didn't kill
one.
her.
She's the one that got away.
Yeah. She
Yeah.
reacts the most, and and by the time he's cut through enough people,
Yeah.
then it's in that way she's slightly more prepared to not
Right.
like
Yeah, 'cause
she's
she
able to
knows
go,
it's out
oh,
there.
there's all
Well, and
like
she
I better do
survives.
something, right? Like she's got to react because
Yeah.
she sees like everybody's gone, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think eventually, though, I think you are right that as we start to boil down what slasher movies, what people get from slasher movies, it then becomes a trope of, oh, well, the person who's more virginal will survive. Like that starts to get boiled.
Yeah.
We simmer and simmer and simmer, and then your stew kind of turns into a gravy. Like
Yeah.
and so eventually it is that because she does seem more chaste, but that's not what they were trying to say.
I
I'm
agree
with
with you.
Drew in that becomes a thing, but it's not the thing here. It is if you take it at the surface level, but it's really about like, hey, I'm survived because I have to. And
And
I didn't
she's
mean to interrupt Drew, but
resourceful.
No.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
no, like I agree with everything you said. But it's also, she's resourceful. Like,
Yep.
everybody else is kind of, none of these other characters know that they are in a Friday the 13th movie.
Mm.
She's
Well,
the
except for
only
the
one.
one the one biker guy. What's his
Yeah.
name? The black
Ollie.
dude.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
actually fight. I was actually surprised that he went down the first time as quickly as he did, because he actually charges at him with the machete, at Jason with a machete, and I'm like, how did he not? That fight should have gone on longer. I feel like.
But yeah, sorry.
maybe it was supposed to go on longer, and they were at that point. If you listen to the commentary, which Tony has name dropped a couple of times,
Mhm.
they do talk about, like, the further they got into filming this, the more they're like, okay, we got to get to the finish. We got to get to the finish.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I do find myself wondering is if maybe that they had intended on them to struggle longer, and they were like, nope,
Yeah.
gotta.
Well, again, it would have been harder to do that with the camera they were using from what
Oh yeah,
from
that's true.
so
Yeah.
all the stuff, like, you can't do a really I'm extrapolating, but going from what they were talking about and what I've read in a couple of different publications and online, I think it would have been hard to have a really kind of deeper fight scene, and they had to do so many takes because the lighting had to be right, all this stuff. I think that probably was part of the decision. It could have just
They
been,
cut his hand off.
yeah,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
yeah.
Neat character. I thought it was interesting, by the way, this biker gang. So we first encounter the biker gang when our some of our leads go, basically Vera, who is the Hispanic girl, and Shelly go together. Shelly has worn out his welcome already. Vera's headed to town. And so they both go together into town. They go to this little store. By the way, this little store right now, if you want to go to the address of it, is a California Pizza Kitchen. So you should go.
Oh man,
That would be.
it's not,
Man.
but it's not even in town. I mean,
No, it's in
this
Santa
is.
Clarita, but
No, what I'm saying is, like, when they get to the store, it's still in the woods. It reminds me of some of the places around Mississippi where you would just be driving. There's a stretch of road, and then there's a general store
Well, and
place.
as you might encounter in Mississippi, she encounters a totally racist clerk who's like,
Yeah.
we don't take food stamps here.
Yes, well, yeah. I mean, all of that would have been just as there's huge chunks of the South that I felt like, oh yeah, I think that's probably another reason why I was like, oh yeah, I know this place. I live
Yes.
here because I saw the original when I was, still living. When we used to rent horror movies.
Hmm.
When I was a teenager, and so I was like, oh yeah, that's like this general store that's like close to my house or on the way,
Mhm.
to town, and I would expect exactly that.
Well, but the
Yeah.
thing is, though, because I said, earlier, the only people of color are the bikers. Well, she is technically Latina, and I suppose you're supposed to know that. That the clerk supposedly thinks that when she looks at her, but she's a white Latina like I am, so she actually does not necessarily in real life, this actress, encounter that, I would think, but the character, I think, is supposed to appear more
It
Sure.
comes
Hispanic than she
across
is.
really mystifying. You're like, why did you
Yeah.
say that? And it takes you a
Because the
moment.
only reason we even
which-
know she's a Latina is because her Hispanic mom answered the door when they came to get her and was like, "She's not going anywhere,"
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty funny.
The thing about the mom, this is segueing, admittedly.
Yeah, please.
I most of the time that I have watched this movie, I never really think like, oh, why is she so anti her going out? Is it just that she doesn't like this bunch of kids or whatever? And then when I revisited it for the podcast, I thought, oh, it's because all over the news they're talking about how there's been a homicidal maniac.
Oh
on
yeah,
the
that's
loose.
right. Yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot
and it
about that.
sucks that she, think about it. Like, it sucks that she loses her daughter that way.
Yeah,
That's
she's
horrible.
exactly
Yeah.
right. By the
All of
way,
those
if
people.
Yeah.
Vera-
She's got to live with that. Like, I should have never let her go.
Yeah, I
Right.
should have just gotten between her and them. Yeah. That sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they go back. So they're at the little bar. I mean, the little store, and the bikers just start messing with them
Right.
for reasons.
For no
And
reason, just because.
yeah, for no reason. And then, so when they get out, they manage to knock over all the motorcycles.
But
And
then,
then, yeah, good.
well, Shelly shows some balls and actually
Yeah, totally.
says, "I'm gonna fuck with these guys," and runs over one of their bikes, thereby making enemies of the local biker gang, which is quite an accomplishment considering they just got here. And
Yes.
I also think it's funny that this biker gang, they're in BFE. I mean, how busy is this biker
Well, that's
gang?
why there's only 3 of them.
There's not a lot. Like, what are they supposed to be doing together? Like, they're not robbing this store, right? They're not committing random crimes. Typically, I don't
Well, they're just
understand really
riding
what.
through. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
idea is they're riding through to
Okay, that makes
wherever.
sense.
Yeah,
So they
They're all hopped up on the road and rock and roll, Jason.
that's
I
right.
guess so. So we follow this gang back to the little barn. The gang.
I like the one guy who cannot stop smoking around gasoline.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
at the place, he's around the tanks, and then when he's holding like cans, which is not as likely to cause, but anytime
Well,
there's
you're
fumes,
right.
I mean, he's around fume like at
No,
the
but, like,
time
the
when he's
other
got
dude's
uncapped
like, "Okay,
gasoline.
the other
Yeah.
dude's like, "Okay, let's siphon the gas out of their van," and then he, like, literally looks at the guy, grabs a cigarette out of his mouth, and throws it. He's like, "What are you doing, you moron?" That
But
was
when
so
he's
funny.
carrying the gasoline for the barn, he's also like, there's a tube that it was a siphon tube, so there's fumes because that's the more
Yeah.
dangerous part
Yeah.
of like,
Sure.
because you can put a cigarette into liquid gas, like
Yeah.
just put it out. But if there's
Yeah.
fumes, that's where it gets dangerous. So he's just constantly smoking around gasoline
Well, I think for
tanks, which
most of the
is
time, he just
amazing.
has the cigarette in his mouth, and he doesn't have it lit, but it's still pretty funny. Yeah, that
He's
was
I
smoking.
love
He's
that.
smoking when he's carrying it though, if I remember correctly. Because I
Really?
remember laughing again at that. Like, oh man, that guy just
So funny.
he lives for danger. He lives
Dangerous
he's,
Danger's his middle name.
It's funny how
exactly
these are.
mostly self-imposed.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's all danger to himself. These are gangbangers straight out of an '80s movie, which I always find funny because it's clear that these films are aimed at people just hanging out in their pickup trucks all around the country. Because there's a kind of a biker gang that showed up in the '80s that has well, I mean, I don't hang out with a lot of biker gangs, so I have no idea. But I know what an '80s biker gang in the movies looks like, and there's like hair that's standing up, and everybody's all hopped up,
Well,
and
they decided to make it more punk,
yes,
and biker gangs were still more like they decided to combine it with metal because there were metal
Like
did
the
it for,
Lost
but
Boys.
to be honest though, biker gangs have mostly stayed in the same kind of area of like 70s
yeah,
of and even into like Clint Eastwood movies and stuff like that, like even where it becomes a very stereotypical and
Because it's
less easy
practical.
rider and like
It's well,
more
it's
yeah
practical. They need the leathers, and they need the
sure
bandanas, and they need
yeah
to protect themselves from the elements. So
Well,
they just have that. That's the look.
yeah
the thing that's interesting about the bikers' clothing is that they actually look the least dated of all of the
yeah
clothing in
that's
this
true.
movie because
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
come
you
back
know
around a
bi-
couple times.
yeah, and I think you can still see, like, maybe the girl wouldn't have lycra pants on, but like there's still people wearing a lot of this gear if you were to go to
Oh
a
sure.
dive
absolutely.
bar on
Yeah.
I mean,
Saturday night.
I know people who go to there's shows, and I've been to a few biker shows, and my parents, they had a couple friends, and they would go out to this one guy's house, and he lived off the grid, and they go hang out and whatever. It's the same. I mean, it's been the culture. Sons of
Yeah,
Anarchy wasn't the start of all of this, right?
these
Like,
leathers that they wear are forever. And I do love, by the way, the completely compared with that, the completely boring '80s gear that everybody else is wearing.
Right.
Well, it's
And
camp clothing.
yeah,
yeah.
that's true. That's a really good point. But it looks like real clothes. It looks
Yeah.
like probably
Like
their own
you said,
clothes,
this is probably
maybe.
their own
Oh
clothes.
no,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
talk about it in the
Oh,
commentary where
really?
they said well, what I forgot which of the actresses said that they actually picked up something different because they wanted to wear something, and they wanted their legs to look better,
Mm.
and so they picked something different. Like they were actually talking like, oh, I don't know if I'd wear that, but maybe I'd wear this, but it
Mhm.
was in keeping with what I wear kind of stuff, which
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. That's really cool. One of the characters is pregnant. I can't remember which one, but
Well,
they
that's only
mention it.
just the one line when they're in the van where she goes that they go, well, if you don't have to go to the bathroom all the time, and she's like, well, that's what pregnancy will do to you. And I think is that Debbie, because I was calling Chris Debbie, but I think that's
It
Debbie.
is Debbie.
But I
Yes.
didn't. They never mentioned that again. I don't think. Do they?
No,
Right.
Yeah.
it has no consequence on
So that was
anything
weird.
whatsoever.
Right. We do
Yeah.
see Debbie. Debbie's the one who takes a shower for a long time.
With her
Um,
necklace on. Oh no, she
Yeah.
takes the shower for a reasonable amount of time, but she washes her shoulders for a long time. But she's
mm,
wearing, that's one of those continuity things where you're talking about that they don't care about. She's wearing a necklace in the shower, and then she's not wearing it anymore when she's walking around in the towel. So I'm like, okay, what
yes.
happened to your necklace? But yes, yes. No, I kept saying, okay, your shoulders are clean. Your
Her
shoulders are
her
clean.
killing, by the way, I thought was really
It's an
powerful
homage
because
to the Kevin Bacon one.
Well,
correct. Yeah, the knife, this big ass knife, just comes straight up through her sternum, and
Yeah.
man, it looks good. I don't know. It's really good. I would love to
Yeah, they
see.
just used the same thing. They used exactly the same effect that they did for the Kevin Bacon thing. There's the whole
What do you
they
mean?
said it was
What,
really tough to kind of set that all up too.
well,
But
because
that
with the Kevin Bacon killing in the first movie, it's a fake body, and then he's like kind of propped below it or
right. So
whatever.
he's basically
So
squatting
yeah, yeah,
below,
yeah.
so that
So they
his,
did the same thing
and then
there.
yeah,
she would probably have to lean her head back, so it
that's
looks like
this.
she's
She had
laying
her
down.
head through the kind of hammock area, and then there's the body.
Wow,
Yeah.
pretty cool.
What
I
I
mean,
want to know is how they did the harpoon effect. I'm still like that one really impressed me because I'm like, how do you shoot a harpoon at a camera? Like it seems like that's really
It's on a. I think it's on the line. Like it's on a.
mhm.
It's
Yeah, it
on
is.
a
It
string.
is on the line.
Yeah,
well, it was
Mm.
cool.
yeah.
Is it backwards? I mean, is it being actually pulled away from the camera?
Oh, maybe
No, I
that
think it's
makes
being pulled
that would
forward.
make
It's a lot more. It's pretty rare.
Mm.
Although if you see, I just noticed this time, I don't think I noticed it before. Was you can see the string like when the snake pops out at the beginning.
Yes, you can see the fishing
I'm
line.
like, oh,
yeah.
That's interesting. Like maybe you wouldn't have seen it in the movie theater, or maybe it'd go by so fast you wouldn't notice. But yeah, the snake is clearly controlled by a fishing line. I thought that was interesting.
and I
Um,
love that first sequence. It's almost sort of an homage to Halloween
mm,
in a way, with the clothesline and all that, but also
that's
tons
Oh,
of
right.
gags.
yeah, yeah, where they have just a billion colorful sheets in the yard, and I'm just like, why do you only have
Yeah,
sheets
yeah.
in your laundry?
Yeah, because
Um,
Well,
this
see, it
because
was
this movie
Mother's
wants to
Day,
kill a bunch
Tuesday.
of people and then set up characters. It starts out with a couple killings just to kind of get us going, and then it introduces all these young people. So the
right.
killings are this trashy couple who are mean to one another. Well, actually, the woman is not very nice to her husband. Her husband is sort of oblivious and having a good time running a small grocery store.
They're
And
just grouchy with each other. But yeah, she's done all the laundry and she's irritated that he didn't pick it up, and it's because he's been murdered. But anyway, but yeah, you're right. It is kind of an homage to Halloween because he's just seeing the figure, the monster, the shape in the sheets, and she
yeah,
thinks maybe it's her husband, but then she starts freaking out because she's just been watching the coverage of the about the axe wielding quote unquote homicidal maniac who of course does not actually wield an axe. But anyway, but yeah,
boy, it's
that was yeah.
amazing,
I
isn't
almost
it?
forgot that those two died. So then, yeah, the kids when they're driving in to the camp, the kids encounter number one, they pass by that scene where they're bringing the bodies
Mhm.
out, and then two, they encounter the guy who's lying in the middle of the street so that he can
The
warn them.
the prophet of doom, because
Yes.
Yes.
apparently
Yeah.
Crystal Lake is crawling with all of these guys that prophesize that you're gonna die.
Yeah.
And
That's really
like,
interesting.
I mean, it
Yeah.
wouldn't be out of the question that there would be a homeless camp like on Crystal Lake. Like,
it's entirely
wouldn't-
possible. And I actually was having this discussion with Jamie once, and she was talking about because Crystal Lake, they never outright say it, but it's largely assumed to be in New Jersey.
Mm.
She talked about how like New York City used to send they'd get out of the mental institutions, they would just send them give them a bus ticket to Woodstock. It's not
Oh my God.
it's not out of the question to think that maybe they're just sending them a little bit further down the road into Jersey.
right.
And,
Yeah. Everything's
um,
legal in Jersey.
yeah,
That's a Hamilton quote.
so
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be Jersey because that's what the license plates and everything
Oh,
say. But
interesting. Yeah.
yeah. By the way, do you guys know that I mean, I know you do because you've watched the commentary and everything, but that they had a fake title for the movie, and it was Crystal Japan after the
Oh,
David Bowie
really?
song. Yeah, so that nobody would know that because people didn't even know they were reading for
Oh,
Friday the
really? How
13th movie.
interesting. Have you guys, there are in the like you mentioned, Drew, this prophet of doom, and even in like the movie Cabin in the Woods plays with how that has become a trope. It's weird to think
Yeah.
that this early on, Crazy Ralph has been replaced by this guy, so it's not a trope, but they kind of feel like they have to hit that mark. And and
I
I
mean, it's
wonder,
definitely a trope of the franchise because they continued to
is it in
revisit
number
that.
2? Do they do it in number 2, or did they?
Crazy Ralph is killed in part 2.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
So
So he's still there.
yeah, and so there's they can but they have figures like this all the way up into Jason Takes Manhattan. It seems to have been abandoned as a trope of the franchise after that. But
But I mean, it's a long history, though. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, Drew. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
But there's a long history of the person in the village who's like maybe a little off, but don't go out. There's a werewolf. Don't
It's
do
pretty neat,
this
isn't it?
Like in
Yeah.
Poltergeist, the guy with the hat. You're
Well, and
looking
like
at
in every Hammer movie, they always stop in the bar. They typically stop in a bar, and the bar guys say, "Oh, don't go near there," because
yeah. There's always the kind of like, and everybody kind of plays it all like, oh, they're hardly ever right. Like,
Yeah.
wait a second, that's usually the thing. People don't say they're always wrong,
Yeah.
or they don't have the second sight, or whatever, but just they're unreliable in there, or it's not. Also, you're not gonna be the look. I've worked jobs where I had to go, hey, if you do this thing that you're saying you want to do, it's probably a bad idea. We should probably rethink this. And then later on, people
Sure.
go, oh, we did the thing, and then this like, yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't say
that
that
is
just because
also
I
the
thought it
case.
was fun. So
That's also
nobody
the case in my current job.
Sure, right? So like
I
you're not popular. Like that's not a popular thing if you're going around telling people, "Hey, don't do that," or "Watch out for the on a moonlit night you could die." Like, oh, I don't want to hear about dying. Even if it comes true, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it's been a trope for a long time, and I think it's kind of again brought back to the forefront with these characters in the first few movies.
I love it.
Yeah.
I this is one of my favorite like stations of the cross in Friday the 13th is that you got to pass by this asshole who's
the
gonna tell you.
soothsayer.
Yeah,
Right.
And
Yeah.
I always feel like that is part of the ghost storiness of these movies because like it elevates it from you could do a normal like slasher movies were prior to Friday the 13th, largely, Halloween notwithstanding, is you had, mostly normal people that were just homicidal maniac and, like they would stalk and kill somebody. Like what Friday the 13th did, admittedly sort of taking the baton from Halloween, but I feel like they did it even more so, is that they've elevated this genre into being something more supernatural. It's something more mythic.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool that they have this sort of Greek chorus kind of character in a lot of these, in most of these movies. Again, they've kind of they don't have that in the more recent ones. They haven't had that character, which I feel is kind of a shame. But at least in these earlier ones, like you can count on this character in most of the films. And,
we have not seen a new like Drew, tell me, like, are we gonna get a new Friday the 13th? Like we haven't seen one since 2009.
That's what they're
right?
saying. That's what they're saying. Like that they're saying they finally figured out the legal rights. But like the thing that everybody's been talking about right now is they're doing a TV show.
This is the Crystal Lake thing, right?
Crystal Lake, with the guy that did Hannibal, Brian Fuller. So that's gonna probably be the most highbrow Friday the 13th.
It'll probably be a reboot.
I can't. Okay, I can't imagine what Well, you know what? He's a smart guy, so he'll figure
Brian
something out.
Yeah, you
Brian
just start over.
Brian Fuller is an artist, and I loved Hannibal, so
Sure.
I am prepared to
You're here for it.
go. I'm there for it, but I'm also saying that Friday the 13th, while I am interested to see what he does with the material, Friday the 13th probably doesn't need as cerebral an artist as Brian Fuller to make it. But you know, I am there for it. Like I'm curious to see what it turns out to. But yeah, Friday the 13th was you know, for the last decade or so there's been a lot of legal disputes
It's
over
really weird, isn't it? Yeah.
who owns what. And you know, it seems like it's finally settled, so hopefully we'll finally get back to it. But you know,
I wish
we'll
somebody
see.
would settle up the rights for those novels so that I could get a copy with a a set.
Are you talking
with
about like the there were a bunch of novels that were in the sort of the world of Crystal Lake, and like
Yeah.
there was one where Jason leads an army of serial killers out of hell. I mean,
I
truly
mean, there's
strange
yeah,
stuff.
there's a set, but if you want them, you better sell a lot of things or just be rich. Like those are the ones where you look at the prices and like, oh, I just wish. Can I just read them? Can I just get them on the Kindle? You know,
Well, you know what? We should talk about that offline because there are probably some options for that.
I
Uh,
know, but you know,
I know you want the real thing. I get it. I absolutely get it.
I
Or to pay.
had a bunch of them, and I stupidly sold them when I needed money. But
I
you
mean,
know,
yeah, there's that. I mean, that's definitely tale as old as time. You're like, damn it, who would? I mean, because who would have thought that the price?
Yeah,
Like, why are
Jason.
these other novelizations? You see, like a ton of them in half price books,
Yeah.
and those because now also half price books has the internet, so now you aren't going to get that secret deal unless you go somewhere that just doesn't care, like a Goodwill style low like third party place in the middle of nowhere, and even some of those are savvy because they can sell it on eBay, right?
Yeah.
Like in the world of eBay, if you're smart enough and not just a mom and pop store that doesn't care, you're going to look this up and go, whoa, I'm not selling that in my storefront for $5 or $3.
Right.
I'm going to sell this for what the internet will pay me.
Yeah, Jason still grieves the comic books he had to sell at one
Sure,
point.
to like pay the
I
phone
hear
bill
you.
and all that stuff. We've all been
Mhm.
there.
I hear you.
I want to talk about the lake finale because I think one of my favorite things about this movie is
before we get into the finale, I would like to go back to the subject of the hockey mask.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
please.
and
Yeah.
and some kills too, because there's some
Okay, yeah,
there's
we
some
should
good
talk
stuff.
about our favorite. Yeah. So okay, first of all, the hockey mask, is it a real hockey mask, or I read
Yeah, that was the
somewhere
thing. Is yeah.
that it's a fake.
It's
a,
the one that you see in the movie is not the hockey mask that was screen tested.
Mm.
What the hockey mask is based on is a real Detroit Red Wings hockey mask that somebody brought to the set. Most likely the 3D supervisor, but the makeup effects guy also takes credit for it, and so does the director Steve Miner. So I guess it all depends. Everybody wants to take credit for the hockey mask. Now it looks quite a bit different than the hockey mask that they molded it from.
Mm-hmm.
They added more holes to it. They added the distinctive red markings to it.
The triangles.
And there were actually multiple different hockey masks, because some of them were bigger and smaller because they needed it to look a certain way over the makeup, or what have you. And so it is not an actual hockey mask that some people will tell you that they only had one hockey mask, and that it and it was the hockey mask that they did the lighting test on, but that is definitely not true, because you can find pictures of them with multiple, showing off that there were multiple hockey masks made for this movie.
Also fits Shelley, and it also fits Jason. So
yes,
which also
and Jason has a gigantic head. So.
Yeah, and the thing I find hilarious now that I never really thought about until I watched it in 3D again is it makes no sense for Shelley to have a wetsuit and a hockey mask and not instead a actual like swimming mask. He's like
Sure.
No, but I
underwater
think
with
he
the
just
hockey mask.
grabbed random stuff that he found.
No, I know, but
around.
it's so funny that he's like, oh, well, I'll
Yeah.
wear a wetsuit and I'll have a harpoon gun, but I won't. Instead of having a swim mask, I can actually see underwater
probably
or
didn't-
whatever
yeah.
better. I'm just gonna also have a hockey mask instead because that makes sense. And
This-
it's just, I mean, it gives us this iconic thing.
Silly, yeah.
It's fine, but it also is like, wait a second, Shelley, what are you even doing? Like you have a
Yes.
because it's a wetsuit and a harpoon gun, and yet he completes the ensemble not with the swimming goggles, anything, snorkel, nope, hockey mask.
Yeah.
the
Which is
script
great.
the script just said that it was going to be a white mask, and I think that, you know, going back to my earlier statement though, that it is kind of awesome that this thing that has become this pop culture icon that
Oh, yeah.
symbolizes, you know, 80s horror in a lot of
Mhm.
ways.
Yep.
Was just a random decision that they made on the fly.
See,
And
this
I
is-
think there's something amazing about that.
There's
Yeah.
that happens so often too. We build these things up and it's like, yeah, and you'll see like you'll see it like, oh well, we needed something then, right? We needed something on that day. Like, oh man, what was your thought process? We had a hockey mask. We were like, how did you come up with this, you know, song? We were in the studio, we had to have a song.
Yes.
Like, you know, or I was just playing. I thought that sounded cool. But as we build and build and build, people will go, oh, well, you can hear, you know, you'll see people overanalyze music, for example. And like, oh, well, you can see they do a minor fifth here, and that symbolizes this. Like, no, I just like, have you
Right.
met musicians? Like,
Mhm.
there are people who are really thinking about that. But in general,
Well, and
That's
also,
not-
writers too. It's like, you know,
Sure.
you do literary analysis. Like a lot of times, yeah, they actually are thinking about, you know, oh, this is a Christ pose and water is baptism. But a lot of times, it really just looks cool. They're just doing
yeah,
that.
the rule of cool is always like almost always now, and sometimes people will go, oh yeah, I mean, I better own up to that. That sounds way cooler than I thought it looked neat that day, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times people will rewrite their own narrative of like,
I
oh
understand.
well, I was in a dark point at that in my life, and I thought of the darkness and the
Yeah, yeah,
shadow
yeah.
and how they
Right,
juxtapose.
right,
Like,
right.
nah, and you'll get somebody like, nah, man, we had the lighting, we had 2 hours to set that up. That was
Man.
whatever. Okay, sure, fine.
I think that the you know, whether intentional or not, I will say this. I think the reason why the hockey mask works is that subconsciously it does kind of look like a skull with some
Mhm,
blood
mhm.
splattered.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
on it, and it kind of gives Jason this sort of grim reaper like silhouette, and yet the fact that it is just a hockey mask, it still kind of keeps Jason firmly rooted in this sort of blue collar, you know, like he's not the Phantom of the Opera. Like
Right.
he is not one of these highfalutin European monsters. Jason's an American monster, part of the proletariat and whatnot. So you know, he's a sports fan. He likes hockey. He's gonna wear a hockey mask.
I
Working
will
monster.
never forget the Freddy versus Jason line where the guy goes, "Man, that is one pissed off goalie." I just
Yeah.
I know it's maybe you could consider it a cheap shot, but I think it's just one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life. Yeah.
You know, I also think that the juxtaposition of metal and horror, the iconography of this also ties into, and I don't think it's too far on the limb, but it's Quiet Riot's Metal Health and how that
yeah.
like mask, like those two were just hit at just the right point in time where there was like some strange crossover. And that just I think it just solidified that all the soup kind of came together to the to the metal and horror thing. In that was just one way.
No, you're
But
totally
there's
right
something
about
to
that
that.
mask. I forgot about that. And it's
Yeah.
funny that hasn't been used more. You know, I haven't seen anybody rip that off, you know, because that would have
Also-
been a really good mask.
Both of those masks easy to draw on a
On a book cover, man.
on a book cover, on your
Yeah.
tablet. Like, yeah, icon,
Sure.
just iconic, simplistic imagery.
I don't know what they do. Do kids even use book covers anymore? Because back in the 80s, you know, you
Who the
cover
hell
your
knows,
book
man?
with like whatever, a paper bag or maybe the.
They
I
don't
always
use
used to
they
cut up
don't use
grocery bags.
regular book covers, but we did cover like at least one or a couple of books of one of our kids with like grocery bags, but you know, paper bags. But I don't. They did not have like when we were young. When we were young, they had all those like the banks would put out.
Yeah,
Right,
those,
the bank in the
Ready,
grocery store.
the electric.
yeah.
Like, I want people to look up Ready, the electric icon.
Yeah.
But the fun part was if once you got into like not even junior high, grade school, you were starting to like turn Ready into horrible things and
Yes.
make it, you know.
Well, you could flip those if the bank gave you a book cover, you just turn it inside out so you'd have a blank one and then you could draw
Yeah, you have,
all
like,
your
Yeah,
symbols
they just
on it,
draw
you know.
terrible
Yeah.
things, or the infamous S that
This
everybody.
is how you get through middle school, you know.
Yeah. Without
Yes.
cell phones. So
Man.
what between the let's see, what's his name? Steve Daskowitz. Between Steve Daskowitz and Richard Brooker, who do you like better for? Like, what look do you like better for Jason? Steve was kind of a smaller guy, but they didn't want to pay for him to come out to California to film. They were like, if you want to play Jason, you got to pay your own airfare.
Huh.
And he's like, no. And so then they chose Richard Brooker, who's a former English trapeze artist who did all his
Jason
own
needs to
stunts.
be a
Yeah,
big.
well, everybody was talking about his accent. And,
Yeah, he's very. He had a very. He's unfortunately no longer with us, but he had a very posh
yeah.
sounding accent for being Jason Voorhees.
Luckily, he didn't have to say anything.
Yeah, Jason was about to say about Jason is I think Jason Voorhees needs to be a big, imposing
Yes.
guy.
yeah,
Absolutely. Bigger the better. I mean, like you know, I know it was weird to have Tyler Mane play Michael, but I wouldn't see a problem with Tyler Mane. You know,
Well, like Jason
Like,
is usually kind of like like even here where you know the mask kind of builds up the back of his neck, so he almost has like a hunchback. Like
yeah.
you know, he's always got this like sort of like stocky, broad-shouldered frame where he just looks like he could throttle you.
Yeah.
and by the way,
Squish your head.
we don't get Splatterhouse without this one with his
oh yeah,
you know, fatigues and like the mask. So
or
Casey
Jones.
Yeah, Jason's
true.
Jason's outfit. Like, what is he wearing here? I can't. I mean,
It's clothing he pilfered from the people who owned the general store.
oh, I see.
Yeah.
And what's so great about that is the shirt doesn't quite fit him. Like his arms are a little too long.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
By the way, when we're talking about Jason's powers and his kind of regeneration, the one difference that I kept thinking about the last couple times, and I don't mean to belabor this because I've talked about it on a couple episodes. Having like the part where they put axe in him and he gets away, I did keep thinking about the story I told you where I've seen somebody with a machete in their head in that same way with the handle pointing out towards people.
Goodness.
And survive, like they were walking this woman around. She had a machete in her head. They had her head wrapped up with like a towel that was slowly getting more and more bloody. But as I was watching this, of all the things that he survives, like, I mean, she bears it pretty deep, but that machete was about that deep. And I was like, oh, in retrospect, I've actually seen something similar to this where the person was walking around.
Well, yeah, as long as it doesn't get into the like important parts of your brain. You know?
But
especially with that mask, because he's got to go through the mask and through the skull. Yeah.
But I just remembered that again, like watching it this time. I was like, oh, well, of all the things he might get up from, that's sort of kind of possible.
Although
based on what I've seen.
He does it right after he's just done
of
something
course.
that have broken his neck.
Of course.
Like,
No, everything. Well, and the fact that from at the end of the other movie, she puts the axe into his shoulder, like, and it basically almost severs his arm, and that's gone. Like, there's no
Sure.
evidence of that. So he clearly
Yeah.
regenerates.
Well,
Absolutely.
But I
the
was just
thing
out of
Yeah.
all of that,
You were
like you
saying that
said,
would be survivable.
that
Yeah,
was like the one where I reflected
Yeah.
this time on, like, well,
the thing
Yeah.
that I
seeing
love
what I've seen.
some of the stuff I love about the way the way they blocked his movements and just sort of the way that he does things in this movie in particular is like there's two particular scenes. There's one where she stabs him in the leg, and then he pulls the knife out of his leg and throws it at her. And then there's like the part where he's trying to get into the van, and she rolls up the thing and catches his arms in the van. He just headbutts through the
Yes.
glass. Like there's just something about how like insanely determined he
Yeah, he has a lot more like fighting skills in this one, similar to how in some movies, but not all, Michael Myers will suddenly have fighting skills, and in this, yeah, headbutting so he can break the glass so he can free his hand. That's very smart, and it's smarter than you usually think of Jason being.
Well,
Also-
yeah, because normally he's just like a human bulldozer,
Right.
really.
Right.
Right.
Also, you get the part where you're like, wow, windows used to roll up with a handle.
Oh, yes.
hence the signal.
Yeah.
There was one of the Ellen DeGeneres things on her one of her one of her stand-up shows. She's like, we still use the rolling window thing to people to tell them to put their window down, even though nobody has those, because what are you supposed to do? Like just do and then she kind of does like a button symbol with her finger,
Yeah.
You look at the person
It's like somebody
that was
said,
really funny.
It's like somebody said that they were a teacher, and they said somebody came up, oh look, he had a floppy disk, the smaller
Yes.
one. Oh, somebody 3D printed the save icon. Like,
Exactly.
oh,
Or
I'm
the
so
idea of like hanging
old.
up on somebody. Like, what does that mean? Hang
Yeah.
up on somebody. Like, what is
Right.
that? What is that? Yeah, it's just that's super.
Yeah, now it's a button.
That is really funny.
Although I still to this day, I think there was another comedian talking about the finality of being able to slam a phone down.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I guess you can still. A lot of businesses still have phones. Like we have Cisco
True.
systems, but the slamming a phone down is way more
Way more
cathartic
dramatic.
than beep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, because you can throw your phone across the room, but then you might break it.
Right.
I was going to say, in the closest I come is in, taking off because at a computer I wear this headset all the time. So taking off the headset in consternation is still not as cool as hanging
Right.
up the phone. Like,
Because it doesn't make any sound for the other people. So
right, it doesn't. It's just yourself alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do think we had led to like best kills or favorite kills in the movie. I would like to get everybody's. I kind
Let's
of
talk about
like.
it. Yeah.
I kind of like the Fox biker. And by the way, Fox is awesome. She just rocks, like the rocker
Biker chick,
look
yeah.
and everything. But like, and she sadly passed away several years ago.
No kidding.
That actress, yeah.
Hmm.
But I like the swing in, swing out, and then disappear, and then later you see the pitchfork, like, and it's of course coming out of the camera. Which,
Yeah, that's true.
why would it not be? I just that's always the one that's the one that stuck with me.
Mm.
Like when I first saw it as when I was much younger. But that setup of her swinging and then not being there and then coming
being
up
like,
on the
"Fox?"
corpse later, I think that's my favorite in the movie.
Mm.
Even though the rest there's super iconic ones, but that was the one
that's a
that
good
just kind
point.
of stuck with me.
Yeah. It is a good moment where she's gone. Yes, Julia, I know what your favorite is because you
What
said
was
that,
it?
well, you said that it was the spear gun. Just
The
suddenly,
harpoon.
just the harpoon just suddenly coming towards you. Yes.
No, it's terrifying. That's absolutely my favorite. Well, it's my favorite thing in the whole movie. Yes, yeah, that would have to be it because and I think after that it might be the guy getting his head squished because that's just so weird and disgusting. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's definitely the harpoon.
Yeah. Drew, what about you?
First of all, what have we done to Julia? She has a favorite kill in a Friday the 13th movie. How did we get here?
How?
By the way, at one
300-something
point Jason
episodes.
goes, I don't think this movie's very gory. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I think it's super gory. But I realized reading the IMDb that actually they cut a lot of the gore out just to keep it from being X-rated. Which is
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny that these movies seem kind of quaint when we look back on. I always say this when we talk about a Friday, because
Mhm.
these movies were considered evil back
Right.
in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like
Oh man,
evil.
that's after the first one. I remember in all the local papers because
Yeah,
I
like
was
No, you're
staying with my
right. Yeah.
grandparents in a small town, and
Roger Ebert. Sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead, yeah.
No, you first. I
Oh, I
insist.
was just saying, like I was staying in a small town. It was all over. How can the body count is you know?
Yeah,
Well,
I find it fascinating. I just want to point. Drew, I don't mean to pick up on what you didn't finish saying, but so Roger Ebert, he didn't talk about this one, but he talked about the prior one and the next one, and he thought these films were horrible, awful, immoral, and I just find that so hilarious, given that I just watched Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which was written by Roger Ebert, and it's one of the most just god awful, gory. There's a gun serial killing. Spoilers for Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. There's a gun serial killing at the end that is weird, sexual, sadistic, crazy, and it's just so strange to me that 15 years later, he would be talking about the Friday 13th movies as if he had not
clutching
written
his
that movie.
pearls.
Yeah, as
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that movie had not been written by Roger Ebert. It is
Well,
so
one and-
weird to me.
Well, Russ Meyer was our tour, so that made it okay.
Who knows?
I
have
mean, 1
no
and 2
idea
are going to
what-
be the downfall of our society, according to newspapers. So.
Yeah.
I love Roger Ebert. Don't get me wrong. By the way, I love Roger Ebert because he loved trash. He would watch anything, but his weirdness about slasher movies was just a very strange blind spot that I can't even explain. So.
Well, in the long run, the Friday the 13th movie is one. So
Yeah,
like,
I
I
guess so.
like they're cult classics, and Oh, but you were asking favorite kill. Notwithstanding, the amazing, eye popping effect. I think I have to go with the red hot poker to the chest, especially after
hated
learning
that
that it took 31
Yeah.
takes to get the 3D right.
Really?
Yeah, respect. But it's probably the one that, because like the rest of them, I have my like Monster Kid reaction where I'm like, cool, look at how gross that is. That one though just makes me win. Like that looks like that hurts. So I'll go with that.
Okay.
Pretty sure they all hurt. But yes, that was horrific for sure. What about you, Jason?
I mean, the harpoon gun. I just think that's a fantastic trick. Although I am impressed by Jason's upper body strength with the eye popping head crush. I think Jason must be doing a lot of flies.
Well, he
basically,
also
in his downtime.
Yeah,
Do you think he
he
just
also-
lays out like a hay bale and grabs a couple of big hammers and he's just like 31 and
I think he eats a high protein diet out there in the woods.
right.
That's
He also shoves a whole corpse
Soylent Green is
piecemeal
people.
into the rafters. So
yes, yeah. Oh man.
that was actually the goriest part of the movie, if I remember.
It
To me,
is.
like it is like it's pretty grotesque.
Plus, it's dripping down on a copy of Fangoria number 1 when you're not going to get that collector's item back.
Yeah.
With
There
the Tom Savini.
Yeah, it's got a
article.
Tom Savini article in it. That was pretty neat.
Followed by Godzilla.
Yes.
Which is great.
20 and to make it everybody feels strange about the passage of time. 25 years of Godzilla is what the article said.
Yeah.
Yes.
With
At
that
point,
awesome
yeah.
with that
Megalon.
awesome Megalon one with the on the World Trade Center, which doesn't make it's just a rip from the King Kong.
Yes.
Like
Good
yeah,
stuff.
it makes no sense to have them there, but that poster
So who's
rocked.
doing the makeup effects here? I mean, like, it's not Savini, right? Savini is
No. So multiple people did the makeup effects on this, including Stan Winston, although you don't really
No
see
kidding.
a whole lot
Well, he probably made
of
that prosthetic head that gets
his
its eye popped out,
work.
since he's kind of
So
Well, no,
what
he
he was
supposedly did
trying
yeah, go ahead.
he
Go ahead, Drew.
primarily did a sculpt of Jason's head, which you
Mm.
can find on like pictures of it online. They didn't think it was scary enough.
Mm.
So they ended up having another guy resculpt it, and right now his name escapes me. I want to say it's a D name. I feel like killing myself now because I can't remember what the other guy that they brought on. Dan Blanco is his name. Okay. But yeah, he did, Stan Winston did come in and do the initial sculpt of Jason's head, and he wanted to do a lot of texturing because of the 3D. And I still think his head looks better than the one that actually. I mean, the one in the movie looks pretty good, although I think Jason kind of looks like a pig a little bit. Like I don't know what fan opinion is about it mostly, but I will say I think the Stan Winston head looks a little better to me. I don't know why they changed it, but you do get glimpses of it in some of the scenes where he's walking around. Like there's some times where you see it kind of in profile. There is actually they shot another ending where Chris gets her head chopped off by Jason.
Oh, did they
and you
shoot
can-
that?
Aside from the fact that you want the final girl to survive, I actually think that would have been a really interesting ending.
Yeah.
But they do want you want a final girl.
You want somebody to live, but you can easily find pictures of that online if you want it. If people want to see what the Stan Winston head looks like, you can find pictures of the alternate ending with like a quick Google search. Like it's not difficult at all.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to talk about this finale because I really love it. I love that it's a callback to the first movie where in this case Chris has survived the night. She's overcome Jason, and now just like the girl in the first movie, she's exhausted and she gets into a canoe and she goes to rest in the middle of the lake. I don't know if this is a thing that a human would do. I'm not saying that they wouldn't. I'm just saying it's an awfully specific thing to happen twice. To like go, I'm super tired, and so I'm gonna get into a canoe and rest in the. I get it. You're running from things on the land, and so you're gonna go float in the lake. It's just neat and beautiful, and it always happens in both these movies. It happens after the sun has come up, or at least very, very late in the night, and then the sun is coming up, and then you have this exact copy of what happened in the first movie, where a zombified corpse leaps out of the water after the girl as she's waking up.
And I feel bad for all those people because they're actually filming this in like January or February.
Oh, really?
So anybody who's in the water is freezing their ass.
Yeah, and this is clearly a stunt woman or stunt man in
Yeah.
this as supposedly the mummified corpse of Pamela Voorhees. And it's cool. It makes no sense. It has nothing to do with anything, but I love it. It's really cool. And then you just cut really quickly to some exposition cops who are talking about how she was babbling about this woman in the lake and all that stuff. And
And you
that's
do
the end.
see Jason laying in the barn with the axe through his
Yeah,
head still.
Jason's body is there.
Yeah.
Does anybody know what happens with Jason's body in the next movie? I mean, does he disappear? Does he wind up in the morgue? Like what's
It's been a while since I've seen part 4. Oh
it's not
man,
it doesn't really matter for our purposes. I'm just curious. Like does he wake up in the morgue in the next one, the final chapter, which is curiously enough not the final chapter of the film. Here it is. Yes, right after the events of the previous film, the body is taken to the morgue and he wakes up. So that's it. Okay. So
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it's a whole scene. That's right.
Yep.
It's been a bit since I've watched them all. Over the past few years I have, and then it's been a while.
Sure.
Anything over the past 3 years is a nebulous thing, I think.
Yes. All right, let's get our final thoughts. Drew, what about you? Friday the 13th, Part 3.
I loved this discussion. This was a lot of fun. I love the movie. Like I that's not going to surprise anybody. I think this is a lot of fun. It's an iconic entry in an iconic horror franchise. And arguably one of the best, if not the best. Not my favorite. That still was probably Jason Lives, but this one's up there. It's among the one of the most rewatchable of the lot. And if you can see it in 3D, I urge that, because I think it does hold up well enough without the 3D, but I feel like if you ever get a chance to see this in 3D, it is like just the next level of fun to an already fun movie. And love this flick. Glad that we were able to talk about it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Julia, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad that it's the first movie to bring back 3D in the 80s after 30 years or just about. I wish that we'd had, that fad hadn't gone away for as long as it did, and I'm really glad that it's back now, because I actually really enjoy watching movies in 3D. I think it's a lot of fun. So I'm really glad that we have a lot of those lately. But yeah, this was super fun, and I got a big kick out of it. I think I've pretty much said everything I wanted to say about it. So
Excellent.
enjoyed the conversation.
Mr. Tony.
Oh yeah, I really like this movie. Like I said, it's my favorite of the series. There's stuff in all of them that's cool, but I think that it's also interesting that it leads to where what we think of as Jason starts here. Even though we know, like, true horror fans know the first two and how they all tie in, and but the icon of Jason starts here and moves forward. And I think that's fascinating. I think it's a great time capsule. It also bridges nicely the kind of late 70s aesthetic with the 80s, a very kind of 80s-y biker gang, but the camp clothing could still kind of be part of that holdover. It's definitely 80s, but I think it bridges, it's 82, so it's like bridging that kind of, I like that. I think it's got interesting kills. Although it is gory, like you said, compared to a lot of things, it's not. I mean, we talked about Fuller doing Hannibal. Hannibal had stuff that legit just, I couldn't believe it was on TV, on prime time, network TV. That just, I couldn't believe it.
I have often thought about that, how far we've come as far as like the kind of gore that you have on CSI is is unbelievable. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I dig on it. I agree with Drew. I think the score is cool. I think it's cool that in the newest, the last Friday the 13th game, that they had you trying to escape by vehicle as part of the thing you could do if you were on the victim side. I think that's neat. It kind of ties into this with the ending. And boy, that effect at the end too, that surprise effect of coming out of the water, that also is just an iconic, just creepy, one of the great jump scares of this kind of time period. Really well done. I really dig this one. It stuck with me, and I should probably recommend some other 3D movies in our recommendations, because if you like this and you can see it in 3D, the new Blu-rays look great. They've been restored just superbly. So I think seeing it, although it's great to see it with a crowd, and it's great to see it on the big screen. When we watched it in 3D, the print is probably better than the one I've seen. I think now they have new digital restoration prints, so that won't be a thing. But a couple of the prints I saw previously were kind of beat up a little bit. Because probably they've been shown at drive-ins and everything else. So seeing it nicely on Blu-ray is great. I would get this one in 4K if it was available too.
That's fantastic. I have nothing to add to that. I'm just going to sign on to what everybody here said. And just add that this is easily my favorite Friday. And I'm really glad we had a chance to talk about it on our 392nd episode. What have you been listening to, watching, doing with your time? Ideally in the genre world, but I really am not that strict. So Drew, I mean, it's been a while. What do you have for us?
So because we've been on a fairly long break, I feel like this is almost an overwhelming question. First off, I want to give a shout out to the awesome hardcover coffee table book, Crystal Lake Memories, by Peter M. Brack. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. It is a treasure trove of Friday the 13th trivia. If you are a horror fan and you don't have it, it's was put out about a little over a decade ago, so it might be hard to find, but I highly recommend picking it up. It is just really worth it. Excuse me, really worth it. I also just saw Megan at the movie theater the other day, and I had a lot of fun with that. It's a very campy killer doll, killer robot movie that I think it's doing well, so I almost feel like it doesn't even really need a endorsement. But I just want to state for the record that I did really enjoy it. I also, I guess, something I got over the holiday is I got a trade paperback of the Thing miniseries from last year that was written by Walter Mosley and drawn by Tom Riley. But if you are a Fantastic Four fan, if you're a fan of The Thing, I think that this is a must read. It's a very character driven look into why Ben Grimm is the best Marvel character, period. And Walter Mosley just gets it. So really loved getting my hands on that.
All right, Julia.
I guess my in-genre endorsement would be a series from the 90s, The Dead Zone, because we watched a couple episodes again of The Dead Zone the other day, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot how good this show was. It was so good with Anthony Michael Hall. Really, really fun series. My not in genre endorsement is Puss in Boots. I love Puss in Boots. It was very cute, very fun if you're looking for a fun time.
It was really cool to reapproach that Dead Zone, because it's this, it's one of many shows shot in Canada back, at that time, like, what was that, the late 90s, the early 2000s?
Yeah, mid-90s is when it starts.
Yeah, and it's, what that looks like instantly. If you watched any X-Files at the time, or a bunch of other genre shows that were shot in Vancouver, it's just, I love that look. I tweeted out, and I was like, I want to live in the perpetually overcast world of Vancouver-based genre shows of the 90s, because it's
but it's so depressing to be brainy all the time.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, that was a good show. That was a real, people don't. It's weird that it's sort of just slipped into the abyss, because that was good. Thank you very much, Tony. What about you?
Let's see. I've been mostly trying to catch up on stuff, and still in the studio off and on where possible with the new Deserts of Mars album. So that's been, practicing the songs and making sure that we have all the arrangements and all that. So that's been a lot of my nights. Let's see. I've seen a bunch of stuff. I'm with Drew. That's hard to catch up. Although I will say, I'm hoping that everybody digs it, but kind of pre-gaming it on VOD next week on the 19th, there's a film from Argentina called Legions, and it's got a lot of really great dark humor. I hope to talk more about it. But yeah, I think people who dig Evil Dead, Bubba Hotep also want to see, there's a whole kind of indigenous shaman angle to it. Like it does a lot. And so, got to see that on a screener, and I'm pretty stoked for more people to see it on VOD. I also want to recommend, if you do have a chance to see 3D movies, I'm going to go back and recommend definitely see Creature from the Black Lagoon in 3D. And there's also a really cool martial arts film called Dynasty 3D that just is, the shots in it are just planned so well that it could have just been kind of a fun kind of martial arts film, and instead they decided, well, we're gonna do more with this, and we're gonna shoot scenes that have long hallways that have stuff. There's the usual gags, but Dynasty 3D is great. And if anybody else wants sadly, it's hard to recommend some of the other 80s 3D.
Well, I have to say that I was 12 or 13 years old when I saw Jaws 3D, and I still remember it. It was like very
Sure.
impactful for me because it was just so many things like that where you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yes. We have an episode on that movie,
Yeah.
and I unabashedly love Jaws 3. Absolutely. Hands down. Anyway.
And I am all about film preservation, but sadly, Metal Storm, they couldn't restore all the scenes.
You're kidding.
There were still issues when they did the 3D on Blu-ray, and let me tell you, that movie overall, sadly, Rain was mad. Watch, I'm like, I got Metal Storm. It was only like, so I like that they restored the 3D, and I like that, it is a cheesy, 3D film from that time. Space Hunter is the better of those two kind of, let's make some sci-fi. But boy, that's a rough one. And I feel bad, like, talking crap about something where people, spent time trying to restore it. So there is a cool thing, but because of the inadequacies of some of the rest, they had the elements that they had, right? So it's cool that they restored it, but it is a rougher one to watch in 3D. It's not necessarily a good enough movie to.
So what do you? So I totally believe you, but what do you mean by that? Like what?
There's the thing that I noticed, because you can like shut your eye and kind of see what's causing your eyes to go like, what the heck? Like your brain's gonna. One of them I noticed is darker, and a lot, just because that's the elements they had, right?
Yeah.
Because I was buying a lot of 3D movies. Dread 3D, by the way, is amazing in 3D. Dread is, if you haven't seen Dread in 3D, that's awesome. But also there's a couple of elements that's weird in the Metal Storm one, where I think like there's one element when they're driving that I think should be behind and it's in front all the time. And I tried, like, on my 3D glasses, you can switch the in out basically. The polarization.
Fancy. Aren't you fancy?
So I was like, maybe that's it. Maybe that's what's wrong. And I tried that. I was like, no, it's just, and kudos. The thing is, like, somebody went and made a Blu-ray of Metal Storm. So we have that.
Yes.
Awesome. If you like that, that's amazing. But it was one of those where I was like, oh yeah, that was cool and fun and cheesy. And for some reason, Space Hunter doesn't have that. Probably because I bet that it was hard to restore the elements. So the fact that we got something like Dynasty 3D and a few others like that is pretty. I like the idea. I think those Kino Lorber 3D ones also have anaglyph options. So if you don't have a 3D, if you can't view them in kind of the polarized 3D or active 3D, depending on what your setup is, you can still watch those in anaglyph. But it also reminded me of the days of, there was a whole promotion in the 80s where they were showing older black and white 3D movies with anaglyph. Yes. So they showed the skull, but you could get, it was a 7-Eleven promotion. So you would go to 7-Eleven to get your glasses. Yeah. That was I remember that being a really fun event to go. I'm going to go get 3D glasses at 7-Eleven and get a Slurpee and then watch this movie tonight. I thought that was really cool.
I have a dumb question.
Sure.
If I watch a 3D movie on YouTube with my Oculus, is it
Mhm.
like super 3D? Like, is it like
I
how does
don't
that work?
I think it depends because one thing I did notice is there are very few services that stream actual 3D movies.
Mhm.
Like we wanted to watch there was something we wanted to watch in 3D. I think it was there was a sci-fi movie and I can't remember what it was offhand, but we knew it was in 3D and we're like, "Oh, cool, we'll watch it in 3D." And we didn't want to buy it the disc or we didn't it wasn't readily available at the time. I guess I don't know if it had gone out of print briefly because it went back down in price. But anyway, we were just like, "Oh, well, I don't know if we need to own the disc. Let's just rent it for $3 or $4." And it was actually hard to find. There's only a couple services that stream 3D. So the Oculus might do something. I don't have one, so it might, but I don't think
I will research this during
you
this next
have
week
to.
and I'll let
Yeah,
you know.
because some of it is dependent. Like my system, I have to have active glasses, which basically turns on and off the shutter so
Yeah.
fast that it fools your brain into thinking that it's the one. But of course, when you go to the theater, like you go to see Avatar now, it's passive glasses in the theater. Because you don't want to have to charge up batteries for glasses for hundreds of people per day.
Sure.
So yeah, let me know. I'd be curious on that.
Mhm.
But yeah, if anybody wants to come to the Facebook page and wants more 3D recommendations, we were going through. But it doesn't get much better though, I will say, than the scenes in Creature from the Black Lagoon is just beautiful. Along with this one, it's probably my second favorite horror movie in 3D. Well, no, actually, my first in 3D, but Friday the 13th 3 is my second because it's really nice.
Fantastic. All right. My only endorsement is going to be for the Archive Colorado, which is this store that Julia and I went to in Aurora, Colorado, which is sort of a suburb of Denver. And they are just dedicated to the preservation of hard element like DVDs, Blu-ray, what have you. And it's where I got Friday 13th Part 3 in 3D came with glasses. So I really love the archive.
Oh,
And
and that's the one that's partnered with Vinegar Syndrome, right?
that is right. Yes, they're partnered
Yeah,
with Vinegar
Vinegar Syndrome
Syndrome.
people are great.
Yeah, so I really admire what they're doing with this store, and I'm just so happy that it's there because if you're into physical media, there are purists who will say, and they're probably not wrong, that we gotta fight to keep physical media around because our streaming solutions can disappear overnight, as many people know with HBO Max. Have removed about 80 titles from their
Man,
collection over the last couple of months, and it's just like they're gone. They could be
it's
back next month, they could be back never. It's up to them. So that's an argument for going to get physical media if you want to make sure you have something.
yeah, and I have a long I could do a whole thing about like being in the animation industry, the shift from during lockdown when I worked for a place. It was like,
Mhm.
yo, you're the best. Animation's the way. Oh my goodness, you're saving us. You're just I love animation. You guys are the best ever. How would we have this content? And once we could shoot live action again, I was like, oh, you mean the kids stuff?
Mhm.
Cancel it. Like just I don't know if we want to produce that. Well, you're in the middle of producing, it's almost done. Like, nah, we got better things.
Yeah.
Like, it's just that flip, man. It's just sorry, I don't mean to rant, but it's just like thinking of all of that. It's just that's yet another thing that's just galling because, and I mean, it's part of why I left where I
Yeah,
was
and it
at,
can
but
happen.
I knew that probably was going to happen, but just seeing the duplicity of it, just outright, just grotesque.
Yes. So a lot of that is what disappeared. I mean, a lot of the animated series disappeared. So yeah, I mean, Teresa Mercado, who's a marketing with Vinegar Syndrome, for her, these physical media is like a religion, and I understand
Mm-hmm.
exactly why. So all those guys are amazing, and yeah.
Yeah,
So the
plus
archive
Vinegar
Colorado.
Syndrome's willing to just take things where I'm like, I don't think that's for me, but
Sure.
damn, just like the fact that you're doing this and nice production value, just wow. For the people who it is for, and I still have a lot of Vinegar Syndrome stuff because they're awesome. But I'll see things and I'm like, I don't know if I would pick that up. But just warms my heart that they would take the chances on the things that they take the chance on and to preserve these just random, sometimes to some people, just ephemera of genre stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Just thank you.
Yeah, no, they're amazing. I mean, if the idea that you can get a 4K version of the werewolf versus vampire woman of this Paul Naschy vampire stuff, I love.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
all that stuff, man.
Anyway, okay, awesome. We will be back next week. God only knows what with, but we'll be back real soon with more stuff. And thank you everybody for being back. We want to hear from you, and so yeah, come to the Facebook page. Let us know what you're thinking, and I'll talk to everybody soon. Have a great week.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks.